What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the Houston Rockets and Los Angeles Clippers game. And in that game, the Houston Rockets had a come from behind victory. They were down at one point, I think, by 17 points, and came back to win the game 122 to 117 and improved to 19-9 on the year, while the Clippers fall to 21-9. Now, those are still pretty good records, but at the beginning of the year, people were expecting the Clippers to win like 60, 65 games. I think at this point, at the rate they're going to win something more like 56, maybe 57 games. Still a really good record. But, you know, uh, Russell Westbrook had 40 points. He had 40 points last night, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. James Harden took more of a backup role, he pretty much was more of a facilitator, especially in the first half of the game. He struggled with a shot earlier on, but still finished with 28 points and 10 assists. All right. I think the Rockets had, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in double figures. Clint Capella had 16. Um, Austin Rivers had 10 points. PJ Tucker had 10. And I always have trouble with this guy's first name. Is it De'Anuel House with 10 points? For the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard had 25 points, along with 9 rebounds and 4 assists. Paul George had 34 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. Uh, Lou Williams had 6 points, but he was ejected from the game. And you can argue that had an effect on the game overall. And Montrezl Harrell had 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 assist. So, you look at most of the overall stats, they were close. The Rockets did have an edge in free throws, but it wasn't just James Harden, though. The Rockets had a slight edge in rebounds, 43-39, and most of the stats were pretty close. The Rockets had a slight edge in points in the paint, 52-44. And when you look at these two teams, it's clear as day that the Rockets give the Clippers problems. This is the third time that they've played against each other. In the first matchup of the season, the Rockets kind of pretty much dominated that game. Uh, James Harden had 47 points, which was arguably his best performance of the season because he did it against a quality opponent. And James Harden just dominated that matchup between him and Kawhi Leonard. The second game was a come from behind victory, if I'm not mistaken, by the Clippers over the Houston Rockets. And today, the Rockets returned the favor for a come from behind victory. So the Rockets now have a 2-1 season series lead over the Clippers. And I think they play again March the 5th. Now, I want to touch on something that I've noticed, and shout out to 78 Sports TV. He did a video talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. If you're not subscribed to 78 Sports TV, please subscribe to 78 Sports TV. He's the general, he's the leader of the LDBC, the Lions Den. In this situation, the Lions Den basketball community. And also, Kevin Hart said something about this on a segment today on ESPN. The Western Conference has not been as strong as advertised. All right? They haven't. Meanwhile, the Eastern Conference is stronger than it was last year. And I can't lie. I thought the same thing coming into this season. So it's not like anybody's at fault. And like this, oh, I told you so. No, it's just everybody was kind of wrong on this. Most people. Some people kind of felt like the East was stronger than they were given credit for, and all praise due to them. But last year, in the Western Conference, the AC was the Clippers. and they won damn near 50 games. They won 48 games. It was a lot more compacted last year in the Western Conference. There was a lot more competition, and the eighth seed had won 48 games. The first seed, which was the Warriors, won 57 games. So it was only a difference of 9 wins between the first seed and the eighth seed. And you compare that to the East, where last year the eighth seed won only 41 games, and the first seed, which was the Bucks, won 60 games. So it was a differential of 19 wins. But when you look at the seedings now, and it's still relatively early, but when you look at the season seedings now, in the Western Conference, the last two teams have sub 500 records, which doesn't sound like a normal Western Conference year. Uh, in the East, it's only the last team, which is the Orlando Magic, that has a sub 500 record. Props to the Portland Trailblazers, however. I had to put it out there because the Portland Trailblazers are now only a half game out of that final spot. And I have a feeling that Portland's going to get in the playoffs. I just have this feeling like Portland's going to get in the playoffs. You also wonder what's going to happen with the Kevin Love situation. The Cavaliers pretty much have him on the market, from what I understand, he seems to have a preference to play for Portland, which is his hometown. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, the West has not been as strong as advertised. Of course, you have the Lakers. You have the Clippers, even though they're not quite as dominating so far as we expected them to be. And you have the Rockets. All right. But Denver is not really doing much. I mean, they're good, but they're clearly not a championship caliber team. All right. Portland has been disappointing, although they're turning around slowly since the acquisition of Carmelo, but they still have been disappointing compared to what they did last year. Utah has been a little bit disappointing. Um, a lot of teams have not really lived up as advertised. In the Eastern Conference, however, what I'm saying, the Bucks have been better than people thought they'd be. Matter of fact, right now they're playing better than they did even last year when they won 60 games. Miami, nobody really saw that coming. Very few people, maybe Celeste did. He's a Miami Heat fan. Uh, the Sixers haven't been as good as people thought they would be. But the East has been overall stronger than people thought they would be. So that's pretty much about it about the East versus West thing. Now with the Houston Rockets, I just don't think that they're going to go far unless James Harden plays differently. The Russell Harden dynamic is going to have to change. James Harden averaging 38, 39 points per game. That's fine and dandy if you're a James Harden fan. That's fine and dandy if you like seeing historical statistical production from one player. That's fine. If you're willing to trade it off with a first or second round exit. If you're willing to go through that, plus hear people like me and Ticket and 78 Ether, James Harden on video, if you're willing to trade all that just to go, wow, he averaged more points than Michael Jordan ever averaged. If you're willing to trade that off, that's fine. But if you want the Rockets to be legitimate title contenders and maybe perform some serious upsets in the playoffs, that scoring balance is going to have to change. It's going to have to be more like, in my opinion, James Harden needs to average more like 30. He needs to average more like 30, and Westbrook and Eric Gordon, when he comes back and hopefully gets healthy and gets into the swing of things and gets, fully to himself, they need to gobble up all these extra points. Other guys have to get involved. That's the only way. Now, look, sometimes we can be a little bit demanding. Sometimes I might say something like, look, if James Harden can drop 50 and have these 60-point triple doubles, we need to see that shit in the playoffs. Now I understand the playoffs you're going against, superior competition. You're probably not going to see that as much. But sometimes I get irritated by the fucking media. Okay, all great players that I know of, all the best players, usually step their games up in the playoffs. Stepped up when their team needed them the most. So I get irritated when certain guys get passes. All right, but that's what James Harden's gonna have to do. Sacrifice some of his scoring. Less is more. And when other guys get involved, it's a beautiful thing. The Detroit Pistons that won the title in 2004 and was making noise, you know what I'm saying? They didn't have one great player, taking 25, 30 shots a night. They had a bunch of really, really, really good players who when they all got on the same page and when they all knew what their roles were and they dropped their egos, they became a championship level team. If they could actually do that, if somebody could actually get James Harden to understand that, I don't think it's going to happen. I think James Harden could do it for stretches of games, maybe like a game or two or three, but he reverts right back into James Harden mode. You know, even if it's this, like, okay, when you're playing against the Cavaliers, the Knicks, maybe the Hawks, the Warriors this season. When you're playing against teams like that, go ahead, James. Go ahead and take 40 shots. Go get your 60 points, your 50 points. You want to gobble up all these individual, accolades. But when we're playing against the best teams, we got to play as a team. You need to cut that down to 20 shots. Eric Gordon has to get involved. Russell Westbrook and all Russell Westbrook. Look, Westbrook has to really fucking work. Look, the guy can't fucking shoot threes, all right? He's just not a good three-point shooter. He's one of the worst three-point shooters probably in NBA history, all right? That takes a lot of them. He's probably the worst. If he would cut on his three-point attempts and would shoot more of his mid-range, you know what I'm saying? If he would just depend more on his mid-range game and only shoot threes when it's an open, clean look, I think he would be that much more efficient as a player. But how many times we've been saying this shit for the last couple of years, and Russell Westbrook just does what Russell Westbrook does. So it's no point in keep saying these things. It's like Russell Westbrook is who he is. He gives you a lot, but you have to deal with a lot too. That's just who Russell Westbrook is. Um, when these guys are clicking with one another, especially when Westbrook is clicking, the Rockets can be a contender. I'm just not convinced that they can do this consistently throughout a 7-game series against the best teams. If they can, hey, it's something. But I just don't think they can do it against the best teams. But they do seem to give the Clippers, they seem to give the Clippers a lot of trouble. And if you're the Clippers, you don't want to match up against this team in the playoffs because they seriously give you problems. You know, but let me talk about Kawhi for a second, and then I'm gonna end this video. Kawhi Leonard has played well. He's played very well this year, for the most part. Um, he's not playing as well as he did last year because I think the issue with his knee is becoming a little bit more problematic for him. Um, I think he's on pace to miss more games than he did last year. And this is a guy that's never going to play probably more than 65 games in the season. And if this is a chronic situation, if this is a progressive issue with his knee, then what is he, 28 years old? I don't think this guy might still be playing when he's 33, 34. So he's not going to have a long career at all. So at the end of the day, I think people need to be a little bit more understanding about this load management thing. Um, when a guy's legitimately injured, because let's be fair about something. Kawhi doesn't really complain much. He got irritated when when the NBA announced that he had a knee injury. If you want to be technical about it, Larry Bird was load managed the last couple of years he played with the Boston Celtics. They didn't call it that, okay? But he missed a lot of games. I want to say his last year he played 45 games because of his chronic back issues. I don't think Bird played back to backs. He missed stretches of games because of his back. It was too bad. And even when he played, he was in pain. They had to manipulate his spine just so he'd be able to play for a couple of hours. This is a guy that now Bird's issues were much, much worse and was much more advanced than what Kawhi's going through. But I'm just trying to say that this load management thing, it sounds like a corporate, you know, it sounds like a corporate, you know, cop out term. But players have essentially been load managed for decades. It just hasn't. It just didn't have. You didn't put a label on it. All right, but I think Kawhi has a serious issue, which is going to cost him some games, and in some people's eyes, cost him a little bit in his overall legacy because of the comparative brevity of his career compared to some guys who played a very long time and were relatively healthy, like a LeBron James. You know. But yeah, the guy's legitimately he has a issue with his knee, man. And what pisses me off is when people like Nick Wright try to insinuate that there's nothing wrong, and he's just taking games off because he's this prima donna who feels like I don't feel like working today. That's the shit that pisses me off. Okay, but anyway, that's all. That's my 2 cents, man. Tell me what you guys think.